The views and opinions expressed by the hosts of Black Talk Radio News and any guest represents their views and their views only and do not necessarily represent the views of the Black Talk Media Project or the Black Talk Radio Network. But we had this story coming to you from BillMoyers.com because history just continues to repeat itself, and we could look back sometimes to try to get different perspectives on stuff that's happening in our time period. So they are reporting that the well-armed uniformed militiamen whose pictures you may have missed, and I guess they're saying CNN didn't show you these guys. CNN, MSNBC didn't really show you the pictures of these guys who look serious, like they've been training and they are geared up for Civil War. But we will show you the pictures of Antifa battling the more clownish white supremacists, you know, the ones that want to go out there with helmets and shields and act like they pretend like they're Vikings or something. Been watching that TV series Vikings that's popular among them. That's what they like to think they are descendants from. So but these guys seem to be very well organized. Looks like military to me. So we should be preparing. Shout out to the Huey Newton Gun Club down there in Texas. Malcolm X told us we need to form rifle clubs. We need to be prepared. Huey Newton. Black people, war has been waged on us on this continent for 500 years. But let me get to this article. The videos that blasted around the world on August the 12th tore holes in many a heart. They showed the silver Dodge Challenger careen down a downtown Charlottesville street toward a group of demonstrators, smashing into another car, hurling bodies into the air, killing Heather Heyer and injuring 19 others, and then backing up down the street like the proverbial bat out of hell. The smash of the collision is horrific. The video and various still shots depicting the murder scene became instantly memorable, iconic, and deservedly so. So did the 22-minute Vice documentary that appeared on HBO 2 days later. If you haven't witnessed the spectacle of torch-bearing marchers streaming across the campus of the University of Virginia, chanting, "Jews will not replace us," in blood and soil, do yourself the mind-gouging, highly instructive favor of watching. This one is a keeper. Someday you will want to show it to your grandchildren when they doubt that armed to the teeth Nazis stalked through America in the year 2017. But amid the great flood of reports in circulation on August the 12th, and since some stunning pictures that deserve to get heavy play did not, and therefore an amazing feature of the day's terribleness went largely unnoticed, except by the ACLU, whose spokeswoman Stacey Sullivan afterward rightly declared that the presence of firearms may suppress speech by others in the public space, adding that the organization is looking at the question of whether government can regulate the First Amendment rights of demonstrators who insist on being armed during public protests. Regardless of anyone's intentions, the way an event registers depends heavily on which pictures editors choose, which get churned out through Facebook and retweeted and otherwise injected into the media stream. But it also depends on which pictures go unchosen. A frame includes some features of an event and leaves out whatever lands outside the frame. This sounds obvious. It is obvious, but it's no less consequential. Very likely, if James Field had decided he had something better to do on August the 12th than gun his engine and convert the couple of tons of steel at his command into a murder weapon, other photos would have gouged their way into the public mind. So armed militias, essential elements of the barbarism sweeping across the country, barbarism sweeping across the country, have not sufficiently registered. And the odd thing is, even the text of newspaper articles paid scant attention to the flanks of armed men, possibly in part because the pictures weren't used. It's not sinister that other photos and videos didn't show up much. It's not censorship. No doubt a major reason is that the murder by auto pictures were so much more powerful. No editor should be faulted for choosing them, but there's a consequence for the for the way the public sees and remembers the event, it still matters. So let's get to the main crust of this article after all those damn words. But this is a fairly long article, and we thank them for publishing it. But he says that photos of armed militias are, as they say, out there. Reuters sent out several photos of white supremacists, including several in helmets and camouflage uniforms holding semi-automatic rifles. One taken by Joshua Roberts illustrated an op-ed piece in the New York Times and also appeared on CNBC Online and in The Guardian. A different shot by Roberts appeared in The Atlantic. Craig Stanley's shots appeared in The Independent. A New York militiaman named George Corbello helpfully itemized for The Guardian's Jonah Walters the 60 to 80 pounds of equipment that each of the 32 militia members who patrolled in Charlottesville were carrying. So I'm going to leave it there. All of these articles that I share with you are posted up in our thread for today's BTR news program in btrcommunity.com. So you find links to all of them. So it gives a detailed list of what they were carrying. Copy that list. Go ahead and copy it if you don't have that in your survival gear or your preparation for the war that has been waging. Again, Civil War only brought white supremacists back into the fold. It did not settle the question of slavery. And while I believe that President Ulysses S. Grant made a heartfelt effort to stamp out white terrorism, well, after he left office, it was especially with Woodrow Wilson, or President Woody Wilson, when he screened that documentary of the Klan, that recruiting film. It was just open season on black people. And so it's been open season. Because here you have, now can you imagine if these guys had the same equipment, but, and I don't know the proper name for it, so excuse my cultural ignorance, but the for lack of a better word, the bandanas that Muslims seem to wear to cover up their faces. I know there's a word for that, but I can't think of it right now. Now imagine if these guys were of, let's say, Eastern descent, Asian descent, even black people, and they were dressed like, Muslim fighters that we see in the Middle East right now. What do you think the response would have been to those people? Do you think the police would have stood down and been protecting people from them? Because you know that people would have been out there trying to get at them and trying to fight them. Do you think do you think that the ACLU would have fought for them to have a petition? So I don't want ACLU to get portrayed as a hero here, because I have a very, very point of contention with them, is that they are the ones who made that white supremacist rally happen when they fought in court for the city to issue that terrorists the permit, all under so-called First Amendment. Again, I didn't serve in the U.S. military to recognize the rights of terrorists to issue these threats. And we know that people sympathetic to ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Muslim Brotherhood, pick a name of these different groups that the United States has identified as targets. You know that they wouldn't be allowed to openly organize like that and go on a military excursion like that. These guys were armed for war. That's more gear than what I was carrying when I was in the U.S. military. They didn't give me no 80 pounds of gear, okay? So they got some extra stuff. I'm saying this. If you are preparing, you need in your preparation to include firearms, ammunition, gas masks, all that. I'm not saying this to sound like an alarmist, to sound like an conspiracy theorist, because this is not a theory. This is factual. That the threat of terrorism that has existed on this continent for over 400 years towards indigenous, non-white, and African descendant people still exists and is very, very real. And the U.S. government, as it has always done, has sanctioned it. either by its actions or by its inactions. Again, if you have any news to report, any commentary, give us a call at 866-510-9025. I produce this program by myself, so it's hard for me to watch the chat or any kind of thing that's being relayed in there. We need y'all to call in and share that information, any news that y'all want to share. But it says, as for the photos that were published, notice anything about the venues in which they appeared. Many of the news organizations that ran them are British. So far as I can judge, no photos of militias bearing assault rifles appeared in CNN or Fox News Online or in the Los Angeles Times or Chicago Tribune. Other militia photos variously from the Albanere Lord Jones via the AP and New Photo and Chip Samodevila, I don't know what these names are about, did show up in Mother Jones, Huffington Post, USA Today, and Slate, respectively. The Brits take the appearance of armed paramilitary units more seriously than American media. Over here, armed men in unofficial uniforms are not big news. Well, it should be big news. But see, again, just like law enforcement has always participated and stood down or actually been members of these terrorist organizations. And we know in 2006, the FBI issued a secret report talking about the infiltration of white supremacists into the ranks of law enforcement. I don't know what they talking about, some infiltration. They always been there, always been there. The media has also played a role in suppressing information about such terrorism or even going to the point of justifying it. If they did report it, this isn't me, some bitter old black man on here just complaining about racism and making up stuff. No, this is well-documented history. Well-documented history. And it's history that is on repeat. It just keeps repeating. And I'm quite frankly ready to stop the tape. I'm ready to stop it. Ready to stop it. I don't know about you. So that is a story that I thought was worthy of our attention and the attention of our listeners. We're going to take a break, and then when we return, we will jump on this next story, keeping it in the NFL. Remember, the NFL blackout is ongoing. NFL blackout 2017, just standing in solidarity for Colin Kaepernick and appreciation for him risking his own life, liberty, in pursuit of happiness, just to do the right thing. And you don't have to agree with his methods. People don't agree with Peter throwing blood on people wearing fur coats and stuff like that, but let's not act like he's doing something that's even similar. You mean to tell me taking a knee? Just taking a knee. But it's more than just taking a knee. It's what he's taking a knee for. It's what he's pointing out. And apparently there are institutions in this country who don't want those things pointed out. Why wouldn't they? Because they might be forced to confront it, and they don't want to confront it because they have enjoyed these privileges, terrorizing and being dictators of the lives of non-black people and black people, non-white people and black people. So that's why this is very important that we show solidarity with people who risk it all, so that we can all pitch in and get together and work on solving these issues. And like I've always said, the number one issue we need to resolve is the fact that slavery was never abolished. Don't take my word for it. Take the word of the 13th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. You're listening to Black Talk Radio News, broadcasting from noon to 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, right here on the Black Talk Radio Network.